contract comes through on a Wednesday afternoon while I am halfway inside an old rooftop unit behind a grocery store in Charleston. My phone buzzes in my shirt pocket. I wipe my hand on my jeans and I answer without looking at the number. A man with a flat voice asks if I can travel tonight, asks if I have mine site electrical experience, asks if I can work under generator power, asks if I know ventilation controls. When I say yes to the parts that matter, he says the pay is triple my normal rate, cash bonus on completion, 1 week max transportation provided. He does not give a company name until the end, and even then he says it fast, like it is something I should already know. I do not know it. I say yes anyway. Rent is due. My truck needs front brakes. Temporary money has a way of making bad jobs sound cleaner than they are. By 8 that night, I am in the passenger seat of a white company pickup with no markings on the doors, heading south and then east through roads that get narrower every mile. The driver keeps both hands on the wheel and barely looks at me. His name is Cole, according to the text message I got, but he never offers it out loud. He asks once if I brought cold weather gear and work boots. I tell him yes. He nods and keeps driving. The highway drops behind us. Cell service goes thin, then disappears. The paved road becomes patched blacktop, then gravel, then a hard dirt track with fresh stones spread over mud. We pass 2 locked cattle gates, one opened by keypad, one opened by a guard in a rain jacket carrying a rifle across his chest. That is the first moment the job stops feeling temporary and starts feeling sealed off. The camp sits deep in a cut between ridges, hidden under floodlights and dark mesh tarps stretched over parts of the yard. I see modular buildings, fuel tanks, stacked pipe, generator housings, and a chain-link perimeter with extra wire above it. None of that is strange by itself. The strange part is how the fence turns inward at the top instead of outward, and how the lower 6 feet is reinforced with heavy steel plate in sections where ordinary mining camps would leave it open. The second strange part is the sound. Even with machines running, the place has the quiet habits of somewhere that expects attention if it gets loud. Nobody is laughing outside, nobody is wandering. Men move in pairs. A woman in reflective coveralls crosses the yard carrying a crate and glances at the tree line before she steps into the lit area. I catch that, and I keep watching the trees too. A foreman named Dale Klein meets me at the maintenance shack. He is broad, gray at the temples, clean boots despite the mud, and the kind of man who has spent years making other people hurry. He shakes my hand once, hard enough to set the tone, then walks me inside without asking about the trip. He spreads a site diagram on a steel table and taps at a section marked Vent Control Node B, then at a backup line running to the main fan house, then at a red note written in marker. Intermittent damper failure, actuator drift, relay chatter. He says the underground air balance has been unstable for 3 days, and if it drops any lower in the west return, production stops. He says my job is to make it stable before dawn, if possible, before tomorrow night at the latest, if not. Then he adds one more thing in the same flat tone a man might use to mention rain. Nobody goes outside alone after dark. If you need to move between buildings, call security. I ask if this is because of bears. He looks at me for half a second too long. That's the simple version, he says. He folds the diagram, slides a radio across the table, then points at a satellite phone locked in a wall cradle. Cells won't work. If you need to call home, use one of these and keep it short. Do not leave camp limits. Do not walk the fence line. If you hear the siren, get underground unless security tells you otherwise. He says it all while signing my check-in sheet. No speech, no joke to take the edge off. He hands me a helmet lamp, a visitor badge, and a keyring with 3 tagged brass keys. When I step back outside, the floodlights make the wet gravel shine white. Beyond the fence, the woods look almost black. The maintenance shack smells like hot dust, coffee, and old insulation. I spend the next hour pulling covers off a dead front panel, tracing a nest of added wiring that should have been redone properly years ago, and finding exactly what I expected. A relay bank half-cooked from repeated cycling, a damper controller with moisture in the housing, and a manual override linkage that binds when the temperature drops. The mine itself is newer than the shack, but the control hardware has been patched the way remote jobs always get patched when production matters more than neat work. I swap out 2 contactors from the spare rack, dry the control board with warmed air, tighten a loose terminal block, and start recalibrating the actuator travel. Outside, boots move fast on the gravel every few minutes. Nobody lingers by the door. Around midnight, an older mechanic named Boone Carver comes in carrying a toolbox and a can of chain lubricant. He is narrow in the shoulders, bent a little from years underground, and his beard is clipped short enough that coal dust has nowhere to hide in it. He watches me work for a minute, then kneels by the actuator housing and points at a scratch pattern on the lower casing. At first, I think it is damage from being dragged. Then I see the gouges run vertical and 2 evenly spaced. 4 lines, deep, close together, drawn down the metal hard enough to peel the paint and mark the steel. Boone sees me looking. "No forklift did that," he says. He does not smile. He sprays the hinge pins, works the manual arm back and forth, and adds, "If you hear bells on the fence, don't go looking." I ask him what bells. He hooks a thumb towards the yard. Road crew put them up 6 months ago. Little alarm tins, chain on chain, old local trick. You'll hear them if something leans the wire. He says it the way a man talks around a subject he does not want named inside a building. Then he grabs a flashlight and leads me across to the control room, built over the main intake shaft. Rain has stopped, but everything still drips. The fence line is closer from this angle. I can see strips of metal hanging at intervals, each one tied loose enough to slap when the wire shakes. It looks improvised and worn, not corporate. Somebody made those by hand, somebody who trusted noise more than motion sensors. From the control room windows, I can see the slope above camp where the trees start. The light does not reach far. It catches trunks, brush, wet rock, and then it ends. Boone points out the fan load, the pressure differential on the main intake, the return air numbers from the west headings, and the spot where the readings jump every time the damper lags. I start working through the controls while he fetches a replacement fuse block. Men come in and out, glance at the monitors, and leave without conversation. Once, one of the security guards opens the outer door, scans the ridge through a pair of binoculars, then shuts it again. Nobody asks why he is using binoculars at 1 in the morning. That tells me more than anything else has. At 1:30, I get the damper moving cleanly for the first time. The actuator swings full range without shuddering. The relay chatter stops and the airflow graph smooths out enough that I start thinking this might actually be a fast job. Then the outside lights blink twice, not a full outage, just 2 hard dips, the kind that come from a line hit or a heavy transfer. Boone and I both look toward the window. Across the yard, a floodlight mast near the south fence jerks sideways, snaps dark, and drops out of view. A siren does not start. No one shouts. The radio on the desk crackles once, then fills with overlapping voices and cuts to static. Klein is in the doorway before I can ask what happened. "Underground now," he says. "Bring your bag." Boone moves first. That decides it. We leave the control room at a jog, boots slipping on wet gravel, and cut toward the main adit where a steel-framed portal leads into the mountain. The yard has changed in less than a minute. Men are no longer pretending the routine is normal. A loader sits idling crooked beside the fuel station. Two security guards are dragging a coil of cable across the lane. One woman from the bunkhouse is carrying a case of bottled water into the portal with both arms locked around it. Somebody has already shut down the upper floodlights to keep the glare off the ridge. In the reduced light, I see movement outside the south fence, low and fast, then higher than it should be, then gone behind a stack of pipe. The portal doors are steel sliders set into concrete, big enough for equipment traffic. One side is open. Men funnel through while a guard at the wall box works the controls to narrow the opening. I am almost inside when the fence bells start. Not one section. 3, maybe 4 from different parts of the perimeter. The sound is thin and metallic, scattered at first, then sudden and violent as one whole stretch of wire shudders hard enough to rattle like cookware thrown down a hallway. Everyone near the portal turns at the same time. Something hits the fence out in the dark, not with the random crash of an animal, but with the flat, committed force of weight driven at a target. The steel plate panels ring. A second impact lands farther down. Then the guard slams the button and the door starts closing. Inside the mountain, the air is warmer and full of machine dust. The sound changes too. Outside, noise vanishes fast once the steel door rolls shut behind us, and what is left is the constant hum of fans, the distant grind of conveyor rollers, and the hard steps of too many people moving in one direction, underground. The main tunnel is wide enough for haul trucks, ribbed with rock bolts and mesh, lit by sodium fixtures every few yards. Klein pushes through the crowd and points Boone and me toward a branch heading that leads to the underground control station. If we lose intake balance, half this camp gets stupid in 20 minutes, he says. Keep the fans alive. He keeps walking before I answer. The underground station is a concrete room carved into the side of the haulage drift. It has a desk, a wall of gauges, a battery backup rack, and a bank of monitors tied to surface cameras. One of the screens is black. Another shows the north yard gate hanging bent inward. A third shows something moving past the lens, too close and too fast to make out. Then the picture shakes and tilts at the dirt. Boone reaches for the keyboard and flips through feeds. South fence is down in one section. Fuel lane camera gone. Main yard camera still up. In that one, I finally get a clean look at what is outside. 3 shapes move between the generators on all 4s, but not the way wolves move. Their backs rise too high, shoulders too broad, hind legs too long. One stops, lifts, and stands upright beside a metal barricade. Its head turns toward the camera. Long muzzle, ears high, arms long enough to hang past the waist. It is not a costume. It is not a trick of dark and rain. It is a werewolf, and there are more than one. Nobody in the room says the word. A driller named Mason crosses himself without making a show of it. A woman from stores named Trina backs away from the monitors and sits down against the wall with both hands over her mouth. Boone leans in close, eyes narrowed, as one of the creatures reaches under the frame of a portable light tower and yanks at something hidden below it. The tower dies. It knows where the fuel line runs, Boone says. He says it low, almost to himself, and I understand right then why nobody has been acting surprised, not shocked. Not exactly. Cornered, yes. Angry, yes. But not surprised. I look at Boone. He does not meet my eyes. How long has this been happening? I ask. He takes too long to answer. Long enough for the company to build the fence wrong on purpose. Klein comes in with 2 guards and shuts the door behind him. One guard is a woman in a plate carrier with mud to her knees and a shallow tear across one sleeve. Her name tag says Price. The other is a younger man carrying a shotgun and a bundle of zip ties looped through his belt. Klein looks at the gauges first, not the people. Main intake is stable for now, Surface generators are split. One took a hit. We keep the underground fans running. We can shelter here until daylight. Price sets a hard case on the desk and opens it. Spare radio batteries, med kit, 2 sat phones, flashlight sticks. Efficient. No wasted motion. I tell Klein the damper is repaired, but the surface transfer gear may not hold if the damaged line shorts again. He says, then make it hold. That is his answer to everything. The next 20 minutes turn into work because work keeps panic from spreading faster than bad air. Boone and I isolate the damaged surface branch from underground, shift more load onto the primary feeder, and start trimming non-essential circuits. Bunkhouse heat off. Yard flood on reduced pattern. Conveyor shut down. Shop compressors off. The room gets tighter as more people are sent below. A dozen miners crowd into the adjacent refuge bay, sitting on water crates and tool cases, helmets in their laps. Somebody asks if the road guards called state police. Price says the road repeater is down and the sat-up link outside the comm shack is probably gone. Somebody else asks if there is another way out. No one answers at first. Then Boone says, there's always another way out. None of the other ways are good. The air warning comes sooner than I expect. A yellow band flashes on the west return monitor. Carbon dioxide rising in the abandoned secondary headings, creeping toward the active section because the balancing damper at the old seam is stuck half closed. I had stabilized the main intake, but this mine is a web, not a single pipe. One bad branch can spoil the whole system if flow starts backing into the wrong places. Klein sees the numbers and finally changes expression. It is not fear, it is calculation. He points at me, Boone, and Price. We clear that damper now. Price checks the magazine in her sidearm, slaps it back in, and grabs a lamp. Boone takes the manual schematic from a drawer. I pull on my gloves and shoulder my tool bag. Nobody asks if the tunnel is safe. Safe stopped being part of the plan. We move into a narrower section of mine where the roof dips lower and the rock bolts are older. The travelway is damp and rib marks show through years of dust. As we go, Boone talks in short pieces while he keeps the map open in one hand. The company punched into this ridge under a lease wrapped through 3 shell contractors. Officially, the deposit is specialty ore. Unofficially, it is deep and hard to access, and the state would have buried the permit in court if locals had understood where the haul road was going. This stretch, the one we are heading into now, sits under what used to be called Harrow Gap before survey maps renamed half the mountain. Boone says old people in the county avoided the gap after sundown for a reason. Klein called that superstition. Klein also doubled security and armored the fence. Men love calling a thing fake while spending money to survive it. The stuck damper sits in a concrete stopping at the end of a return airway branch, mounted behind a grated service door. It has not been maintained properly in months. Moisture has crusted the hinge, the actuator coupling is twisted, and one of the linkage pins has slipped half out. I kneel in the grit, set my lamp on a rock, and start freeing it while Boone holds the light higher. Price stands watch in the intersection 10 yards back, half-turned toward the dark branch we came from. The tunnel is not silent. There is always air moving, always drip from the roof, always tiny sounds made louder by the shape of the place. But under that, once my wrench starts clicking on the pin, I hear another sound carried along the return. Scrape, pause, scrape again. Not close, not random either. Something is moving where no one should be moving. Price hears it too. She lifts one hand without looking back at us. Boone stops breathing through his nose long enough to listen harder. The sound comes again, this time with a dry metal note. Chain on rock. I glance towards the intersection. The cap lamp beam reaches only so far before it thins into dust. Could be loose mesh, Boone says, but he does not sound convinced. I drive the pin back into place, force the linkage free, and swing the damper arm manually. It sticks halfway, then gives with a hard jerk that nearly takes my shoulder with it. Air changes at once. The pressure shift moves across my face and jacket sleeves and pulls dust along the floor in a straight line. Better. Not perfect, but better. Then something in the dark beyond Price's lamp clicks on the wall once, deliberate, like a nail tapping stone. Price backs toward us in controlled steps. "Move," she says. Not loud, not panicked, just done discussing it. We pull out fast, Boone folding the map as he walks, me carrying the tool bag open because there is no time to zip it. Behind us, the return airway starts making a rough, pulsing sound as the free damper changes the flow. For 3 seconds, I think the scrape behind us is only loose debris moving in the draft. Then the beam from Price's lamp catches 2 eyes low to the floor, far back at the bend, reflecting pale green. They rise. The head that comes up above the rib line is long and narrow, ears high, teeth white in the dust light. One hand touches the wall, fingers spread too wide, claws black at the tips. It keeps pace without rushing, which is worse than a charge. It already knows the tunnel narrows ahead. We make the junction and turn into the haulage drift where the roof lifts again. The creature behind us does not come all the way into the open. It stops at the edge of the wider light and watches. Then a second shape appears above it on the rib, clinging to the mesh where no human body could hold. Boone says a word under his breath I do not catch. Price raises her pistol but does not fire. "Not yet," Boone tells her. "Noise carries." I want to ask what comes to noise if what we can already see is not enough. Instead, I keep moving. We reach the underground station with nothing chasing us at full speed, but the moment the door closes behind us, someone at the monitor desk says the east ventilation raise just lost pressure. Another path, another test. The pack is not guessing. It is moving through the mine around us, learning the branches. What follows is the worst kind of siege, the kind with math in it. Air volume, battery reserve, fuel burn time, head count, refuge bay capacity. We have 63 people underground by the board count, including me. If the main fans stay stable and the return paths stay open, the air holds. If one generator fails and the backup cannot transfer, the numbers turn ugly in a hurry. Klein keeps saying sunrise as if dawn alone solves anything. Price says the pack hit the fuel lane first, then the south fence, then the light tower. It wanted us below, she says. No one argues. On the monitor, one surface camera still shows the yard. The creatures move in and out of frame, not in a frenzy, but in patterns. 2 near the doors, one at the dead generator, another at the comms shack. Watching, testing, waiting for us to commit to one answer. A woman I have not met before steps from the refuge bay carrying a canvas sack with something heavy in it. She is maybe 60, hard-faced with coal dust caught in the lines of her knuckles and a headlamp strapped over a knit cap. Boone calls her Veda. She dumps the sack on the desk and outspill old handbells, rusted nails wired in bundles, 2 strips of rowan bark dried brown, and a small tin of something gray that looks like ash mixed with metal filings. Klein snaps, "Not now." She ignores him. She points at the map, at a section marked Old North Return, sealed years ago after a roof shift. "Your best air is there if the crosscut still breathes," she says. "That line runs under the old ward posts. It kept them off the miners before your company blasted through the first markers." Klein tells her enough. She stares at him until he looks away. That lands harder than shouting would have. I ask what the Old North Return needs. Boone answers before Veda can. Manual louvers, mechanical only. No actuators, no remote panel, all hand wheel and chain gate. If the crosscut is intact, we can pull clean air through that route and take pressure off the main system. If it is blocked, we waste time we do not have. Price says the east rays is getting hammered from somewhere above, which means the creatures found at least one vent line. Pick something, she says to Klein. Hold here and wait for the air to go bad, or move. Klein rubs both hands over his face once and points at me again. Mercer, Boone, Veda, Price. Check the north return. Everyone else stays put. He is still trying to sound like a man in charge of a schedule. The room has already moved past that. The old north return sits beyond a barrier wall and a maintenance gate chained shut with 3 different locks. Boone has one key. Veda has another. The third hangs on a nail in the station, tagged in faded ink. Nobody expected to open it in a hurry. The passage beyond smells older than the active workings, with cold, damp rock and old timber hidden under newer concrete supports. Somebody once whitewashed parts of the ribs here, and the chalky streaks still show under grime. Every few yards, an iron spike is driven into the wall, shoulder high, each wrapped with rotted cord. Not safety equipment, not official hardware. Old habit, old local protection. Veda keeps one hand on the bell in her pocket while she walks. She is not trembling. She looks annoyed, which somehow makes the place worse. We find the crosscut partially slumped but still passable. Broken timbers choke the left side, and a fallen mesh sheet blocks part of the floor. Boone and I clear it fast, hauling chunks of rock and splintered wood aside, while Price watches both ends of the tunnel. Veda shines her light on the wall where old miners scratched dates and initials into the soft layer over the stone. Some marks are from the 1930s, some are newer and cut deeper. One symbol repeats in a few places, a ring with 3 slashes through it. I ask if it is a company mark. Veda says no. It means do not sleep here after sunset. She says it like she is reciting a rule for a child, not sharing folklore in a dead tunnel while werewolves move above our heads. That plainness does more to sell it than any dramatic whisper could. At the end of the crosscut, we reach the hand-wheel louver. It is bigger than I pictured, a steel gate set into a bricked stopping with a chain drive leading up into a counterweight box. Rust flakes off the spokes when I touch it, but the shaft is still solid. I set my boots, grip the wheel, and lean hard. It resists, then groans, then begins to move a fraction at a time. Air starts pulling through the cracks before the gate is even halfway open. Clean, cold flow, good sign. Boone grabs the opposite side and pushes with me. The chain clicks over the sprocket teeth. The counterweight rises. Veda stands at the branch mouth with one of her bells in hand. Price turns her lamp off for 2 seconds and listens in the dark, then snaps it back on. Something's in the upper cut, she says. The first one appears above us, not from ahead. It drops from a ledge in the old ventilation drift and lands on all fours with a sound more solid than any animal should make on wet rock. Dust kicks up around its hands. Its fur is dark and patchy where old scars break through. One ear is torn. Its eyes catch the lamp beams and burn white-green for a second before the pupils close. Price steps left to get a clear line, but the creature does not charge. It paces sideways, forcing her to move with it, while a second shape scrapes along the upper ledge to her right. They are working angles, herding. Boone mutters, back to back. I do not let go of the wheel. The louver is 3 turns from full open, and if I let it swing shut after coming this far, we may not get another chance. Price fires once when the lower one feints toward Veda. The shot cracks through the tunnel and flattens my hearing for a second. The creature jerks aside before the round reaches where its chest had been. Too fast. Not magic fast, predatory fast. It knows when a body is about to commit. The second one drops behind us, and suddenly the tunnel is not a line anymore. It is a knot. Veda throws a fistful of gray powder across the floor between us and the closest creature. The stuff flashes in the lamp beam, bright specks in the dust, and the animal-faced thing checks itself hard enough that its claws screech on stone, silver. Not much, ground fine and mixed with ash. The pause it gives us is real. Boone slams the bell against the iron spike beside him, once, sharp enough to wring my teeth. Both creatures flinch at the sound. I put everything I have into the wheel. It turns, one full rotation, two. The gate grinds open the last few inches, and air surges through the opening in a hard, cold stream that sucks the dust toward the return. My lamp flickers in the rush. Boone grabs Veda by the coat and pulls her toward the crosscut. Price backs with the pistol up, then holsters it and draws a short-barreled shotgun from the sling on her back. She fires at the floor, just ahead of the lead creature, not trying to hit it clean, trying to make noise and rock spray. It works for one more second. One more second is enough. I jam the wheel lock pin into place, wrench my hand free, and run. The creatures come after us through the crosscut, but the shape of the tunnel helps. It narrows, bends, forces them to duck the lower roof. Boone drags the fallen mesh sheet back into the center path as he moves. It does not stop anything for long, but it breaks stride. Price covers our retreat in bursts of movement, never standing still in the same spot twice. Veda keeps ringing the bell every few steps, not wildly, just once, then once again after a pause, enough to make the sound bounce ahead of us. When we hit the maintenance gate, Boone slams it and runs the chain through with hands that know the links by touch. The first creature hits the far side before the last padlock is set. The steel slams inward and springs back. The entire frame shakes. Then another impact lands higher from above, and the hinges scream. We get the gate secured and fall back toward the station with the air now moving the right direction. I can feel the change even before the gauges confirm it. Dust is pulling toward the Old North return. The stale edge is easing out of the main drift. Good, better than good. It might keep 63 people breathing until daylight. The problem is noise. The shot, the bell, the impacts, all of it echoes through the workings and tells every creature inside the mountain where the people are clustered. By the time we return to the underground station, the refuge bay is on its feet again. Men are grabbing helmets, checking lamps, lifting tool handles because no one has enough real weapons to go around. Klein looks at the numbers on the board, sees the airflow improve, and for the first time I watch Relief lose a fight with the next problem crossing his face. How long until they get through the old gate, he asks Boone. Boone answers with one word, soon. What saves us next is not bravery, it is layout. The station sits between two controlled fire doors meant to isolate sections during an underground fire. Thick steel sliding on overhead tracks, powered by local hydraulic packs with manual release valves. They are built to stop smoke, not monsters, but steel is steel. I go straight for the nearest door controls while Boone pulls the maintenance binder for the hydraulic units. Price and two of the miners begin moving water crates and tool cabinets into a funnel shape so the refuge bay entrance cannot be rushed all at once. Veda dumps the rest of her bells across the floor and tells the men to wire them low, not high. It knows to reach high, she says. Nobody laughs at that. Nobody even blinks. We are past deciding what sounds crazy. The first impact on the old tunnel gate reaches us as a tremor through the rock and a dull metal note through the air. Then another. Then the chain or the hinge gives with a crack that echoes down the maintenance branch. Price kills the overhead light in that direction and leaves only 2 low work lamps on the floor. It narrows the approach, keeps our eyes adjusted, and throws long shadows that make it harder for anything advancing from darkness to read the room. I finish priming the hydraulic line on the first fire door and test the manual slide. It moves, slow, but it moves. Boone gets the second one ready farther back. Between the 2 doors is a choke section maybe 18 feet long. If we bait the creatures into that pocket and drop both doors, we can cut the number reaching us at one time. It is an ugly plan, but it is a plan that uses machines. And machines are the one thing in this mountain I understand better than the pack does. The lead creature comes into the maintenance drift, low and deliberate, its shoulders brushing the rib mesh. Behind it, I catch 2 more shapes hanging back where the tunnel widens. It sniffs once, not exaggerated, just enough to sort air. Then its head tilts toward the floor where the first line of bells is wired ankle-high between anchor bolts. It sees them. It steps over the first string. The second string is lower, hidden in shadow between a crate and the wall. Its rear foot clips the wire, and 6 little bells chatter in a flat burst. At the same time, Price snaps on a hand lamp from the side, bright into its eyes. It lunges toward the light exactly where she wants it. I pull the manual release. The first fire door drops, slamming down behind the lead creature with a force that shakes dust from the roof. The trapped section becomes noise and steel at once. The creature whips around, hits the closed door, turns back, and charges the opening still left ahead. Boone yanks the second release. That door comes down slower, old seals dragging, and for 1 second I think it will not make it. Then it slams shut with the creature inside the pocket between them. The sound in that steel box is unreal, not magic. Mass and rage and claws on plate, and impacts that ring through the hydraulic frames. The men in the refuge bay step back without being told. One miner starts praying under his breath. Another crouches and begins tightening the floor anchors on the nearest lampstand because he needs his hands doing something. Price checks the seals at the edges of both doors. They hold. Not perfect, but enough. We have bought time measured in minutes, maybe more. Klein chooses that moment to finally say what he should have said hours ago. He tells us the company knew the ridge was an active corridor. He says the first survey team lost 2 men 3 years ago at a temporary drill camp half a mile from here. He says legal buried it, private security took over, and the mine was pushed ahead because the ore body was too valuable to walk away from. He says fencing, lights, and armed guards were supposed to make a permanent camp survivable until extraction reached the richest seam. Veda stares at him and says, "You dug through the old markers." He does not deny it. She points at the map where the main south cut slices straight through the oldest part of Harrow Gap. "You broke the line that kept it moving past. Now it stops here." Klein looks at the steel door still shaking in its frame and says nothing at all. There is no time to hold a grudge underground when the air and the doors both have time limits. The trapped creature keeps hammering at the front door, and I can already see one mounting bolt starting to creep under the repeated hits. The hydraulic packs are holding, but if the frame warps enough, the seal will gap. Boone spreads the map again and points to a conveyor service tunnel on the far side of the active headings. It leads to an emergency ore transfer at it lower on the ridge, almost a mile from the main camp. That exit is not on the access road and not fenced the same way. If the pack has focused on the main yard and vent lines, the lower adit may still be clear enough to reach at first light. But getting 63 people there means crossing active sections, bridging one drainage cut, and manually starting a booster fan at Junction 7 so the air in the transfer tunnel stays clean while we move. Everyone looks at me because the booster fan uses the same kind of abused starter panel I have been fixing all night. We break the group into columns because narrow mine travel punishes clumps. Injured first in the middle, strongest miners at the rear. Price and 2 guards rotating front security. Boone en route, Veda with the center group. Klein carrying one of the sat phones he should have used more honestly hours ago. I go ahead with Boone and Price to Junction 7. The active section we pass through is ugly in a plain industrial way. Loaders parked mid-shift, drill hoses left coiled where men dropped them, lunch pails under a bench, a radio still hissing static from a charging dock. The work stopped fast and in the middle of itself. That detail gets to me more than the monsters for one moment. Then a sound runs above us in the ventilation lagging, a rapid padded movement moving parallel to our route, and the human mess returns to being the less urgent problem. Junction 7's booster fan panel is mounted on a post at the mouth of a long transfer drift. The enclosure door is half open and hanging wrong. Claw marks rake across the paint where something hit it and peeled the latch. Inside, the starter has tripped and one control wire is pulled loose. I kneel, light in my teeth, and start rebuilding the circuit by hand, while Boone checks the fan housing and Price scans the tunnel. The motor insulation smells hot, but not burned through. That is good news. I strip the damaged wire, re-terminate it, reset the overload, and bridge the cracked selector switch with a temporary jumper from my bag. Not pretty. Enough. When I hit start, nothing happens for half a second. Then the contactor slams in and the fan spins up with a slow, rising howl that pushes stale air down the transfer drift and draws fresh flow behind us. Boone grins for the first time all night. It lasts maybe 1 second. Something drops onto the fan housing from the roof supports above. The whole unit shudders. Price fires upward on instinct, and the muzzle flash fills the drift in white light. The shape launches clear of the housing before I fully track it. It lands beyond the spill of our lamps and circles left, forcing us away from the panel. Another shape answers from farther down the drift. They are trying to get around us again, not charging blind, trying to pin the working equipment and the people who know how to run it. Boone yells for the main group to move faster. I grab the panel door and slam it shut so nothing can rip the jumper loose from outside. Then I wrench the disconnect lever down part way, stop, and shove it back up. The motor surges harder, spinning the fan faster than the old housing likes. The extra vibration makes the frame scream and throws a new wash of dust and grit into the drift. The creature nearest the housing backs off from the blast of air and debris long enough for us to retreat. The main group reaches us in staggered lines, helmet lamps bouncing, boots crunching in the rock dust. No one is screaming. That almost makes it worse. It is disciplined in the desperate way people get when every extra sound might bring more danger. We feed them into the transfer drift. Price and the other guards fire only when something shows close and clear, and even then only single shots to turn movement, never to stand and fight. Veda walks the center with a bell wrapped in cloth in one hand and a miner's measuring pole in the other. Every time the roof or wall picks up a strange echo, she taps the pole against steel once, then listens. Boone says the old men underground used to do that, to tell if something living was moving with the draft or against it. Right now I do not care if it is folklore. I care that it keeps the line moving without bunching up. Halfway down the transfer drift, we hit the drainage cut. It is a narrow concrete trench crossed by 2 grated walkways, both slick with runoff. The fan behind us is doing its job, but the air ahead feels dead and unmoving, which means the lower adit door is either closed or blocked. Klein sends 2 men across first with pry bars. They reach the other side and start on the lower bulkhead wheel. Then the lights over the trench go out. Just those lights. A branch breaker somewhere. The dark becomes layered at once, with only helmet lamps and one emergency strip, glowing red along the wall. In the red wash, I see a shape slide under the far walkway, chest nearly scraping concrete, moving through the shallow runoff where a man would have to crawl. It comes up between the two first men, before either one can turn fully. Price fires. One miner drops his pry bar and stumbles back across the grate so fast he nearly knocks another into the trench. The line bunches, exactly what the pack has been trying to force all night. I grab the nearest man by the vest and shove him forward because stopping here kills us faster than a bad decision down the line. Boone takes the rear of the bunched group and starts directing people across, one at a time, hard voice. No wasted words. Veda unwraps the bell and rings it directly into the trench under the walkway. The sound hits the concrete walls and comes back sharp enough that the creature below checks itself and drops low again. That gives the two men at the bulkhead one clean moment. The wheel turns, the lower adit door cracks, then opens just enough for a thread of dawn gray air to cut into the drift. We are close. Not safe. Close. Price crosses last before the rear guard, backing over the grate without taking her eyes off the shadows below. The lower adit is smaller than the main portal, more of a service exit than a haul route, but it leads out to a switchback road cut down the backside of the ridge where an old ore truck is parked nose out under a corrugated lean-to. One of the road guards must have staged it earlier, or planned to. Keys are taped under the dash. That detail tells me some people at this camp expected the polished plan to fail long before tonight. The sky outside is not bright yet, but it is no longer full night. The eastern edge of the clouds has started to thin. The woods beyond the cut are still dark enough to hide movement, and I can hear it there, pacing the brush line, keeping with us. The difference now is that the pack is not pressing as hard. It slows when the first real gray enters the clearing. We load the truck and a smaller utility carrier in a rush that would be chaos anywhere else, and somehow becomes organized here because every person finally wants the same thing. Forget the ore, forget the equipment, fill seats. Hold on. Klein makes the mistake of running back toward the adit office for a lock case he left beside the wall, a metal sample case no bigger than a briefcase. Price grabs his shoulder and tells him to leave it. He jerks free and goes anyway. A shape breaks from the brush at the edge of the cut, fast and low. It is not coming for the group. It is coming for the man who split from it. Klein sees it too late, drops the case, and throws both arms up. Boone swings a length of steel pipe from beside the truck bed and strikes the side of the adit door frame hard enough to ring it. Veda rings her bell at the same instant. The creature veers, not in fear, but in sudden irritation at the sound, enough for Price to put one round into the dirt at its feet and force it sideways. Klein gets back to the truck without the case. I take the wheel of the ore truck because I know heavy equipment well enough, and the guard staged it for manual transmission. Boone climbs in on the passenger side. Price rides the step rail with one hand locked inside the door frame and the shotgun across her chest until we clear the first turn. The utility carrier follows with the rest packed in tight. The switchback road is narrow and slick, cut into the hillside with raw drop on one side and rock wall on the other. Dawn keeps building, slow but steady, turning the fog in the hollows pale instead of black. I can still see movement in the trees running parallel to us, shadows between trunks, shapes that keep pace where the ground allows. Once, one of them stands on a boulder above the cut and watches us pass. In full gray light, it is worse, not better. Less room for doubt, tall, scarred, real. The final gate at the access road checkpoint is still manned by one surviving guard in a mud-stiff jacket. He looks at the truck, at the packed carrier behind it, and at the tree line beyond us, then opens the steel gate without a single question. The checkpoint itself is built heavier than I noticed coming in. Thick posts, welded braces, old bells hung under the crossbar, and a line of iron spikes driven along the ditch at wheel height. Not official corporate hardware. Local work added after the plan was already in place. The guard slams the gate behind the second vehicle and throws a lever that drops a secondary brace into place. We keep rolling. No one argues about stopping. No one asks whether the brace will hold forever. It only has to hold longer than we stay there. A mile down the road, the ridge opens enough that the camp is hidden behind stone and timber. The sat phone in Klein's hand starts vibrating with an incoming call from whatever office signed off on this job. He stares at the screen and does not answer. His face is gray and dirty and smaller than it looked under the mind lights. Boone looks out his side window and says, "You can tell them. The mountain sent back the bill." Klein does not react. He just powers the phone off and sets it on the dash between us. In the back, Veda still has the bell in her hand, wrapped again in cloth. No one asks for a full explanation. No one wants a clean one. We have enough truth already to carry. The road turns toward county pavement, and the first ordinary sign we pass is a faded speed limit marker leaning in the weeds. It looks almost absurd after the last several hours. My hands are black with dust and grease from the panel work and the wheel, and there is silver-gray grit still ground into the creases from when Veda threw the powder across the crosscut. Boone notices me looking at it. "Keep that on you till you get home," he says. I nod and keep driving. Behind us, the ridgeline is losing shape in the morning haze. Whatever still moves in those woods is staying with the shadows it has left. The truck rattles, the engine runs rough but steady, and the tires finally reach real pavement. I do not know what the company will call this before noon. Equipment loss, wildlife incident, temporary closure. Men with desks are good at putting dull names on nights that should shut places down forever. What I know right now is simpler. I came in to fix bad ventilation controls at a hidden mine camp and spent the dark helping 63 people get out of a mountain that should never have been dug the way it was. The ore can stay in the ridge, the fences can rot, the sample case can sit where Klein dropped it. I keep the truck straight, keep my eyes on the next stretch of road, and keep going while the sky turns from gray to the first thin color of morning.